Good morning, guys. So, this morning I want to share a story of Gideon and the fight that he had, or, well, the things that happened before the fight that he had with Midian. Um, and it starts with chapter 7, verse 1 in Judges, and it'll go through verse 8. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him, rose early and camped beside the spring of Harod. Excuse me. And the camp of Midian was on the north side of them, by the hill of Morah in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, "The people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into their hands. For Israel would become boastful, saying, my own power has delivered me. Now therefore come, proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is afraid and trembling, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead." Excuse me. So 22,000 people returned, but 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, "The people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. Therefore it shall be that he of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, he shall go with you. But everyone of whom I say to you, this one shall not go with you, he shall not go." So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, "You shall separate everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps, as well as everyone who kneels to drink." Now the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people kneeled to drink water. The Lord said to Gideon, "I will deliver you with the 300 men who lapped, and will give the Midianites into your hands. So let all the other people go, each man to his home." So the 300 men took to the people's provisions and their trumpets into their hands, and Gideon sent all the other men of Israel, each to his tent, but retained the 300 men, and the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. So, this is, I like this story because it shows how um, God knows how our hearts can be and how arrogant that we can become when we think that we, accomplished something on our own, but it was really His doing that allowed the success of whatever we were trying to do. Um, so Gideon had about 32,000 men that he was going to take to fight the Midianites with, but God was like, "No, there's too many people. I'm not going to let you take the Midians with that many people, because they're just going to boast that they did it. They did it through their own means, not acknowledging God at all." And so, he had, of course, he had Gideon let all those who were afraid to die, who were trembling with fear about the upcoming war, to go home. No penalty, no recompense, and no shame involved. So about a third of the people went home. But God said that's still too many. And so God told Gideon that he had a way to reduce that number down from 10,000 to just 300. And he did it, to us it kind of seems like a silly way of doing it. But it was effective because um, it did bring that number down to 300. And so the rest of the men were sent to their tents, and sent home. And God put 300 up against, I don't know, definitely thousands of opposition opposing foes. Um, but God wanted to make sure that he was going to rightfully get the glory for delivering his people from the Midianites. And in fact, if you read on, I believe that they did it without even drawing a sword. They did it with trumpets and breaking jars on the ground surrounding the camp. When they all did that, God created such confusion among the Midianites that they were actually taking themselves out before turning tail and running. And then, people along the countryside would, do the rest. But most of that army was wiped out from the confusion that all this noise had caused. Basically, God made the Midianites panic and just go crazy. But the whole purpose was to show that God was in control and God would take care of his people as he promised, and he did. You know, and so, yeah, when you read about how God chose the 300, it might sound ridiculous, but if you think about it, how many times has God brought you out of a situation in the most ridiculously seeming fashion ever? You know, it it is either laughable or just completely makes no sense whatever on how you got through a situation or how you were able to complete a task that seemed, monumentally impossible. All things are possible with God. There's nothing that God can't do. And and a lot of times God will give us a task so big that when it's all done, we can't say, we did it on our own, because he would make the problem and the result so far apart from each other that the only logical thing we can think of is, it's by God's will and His will alone that that these things were accomplished. I've had days at work where I would have an insurmountable amount of stuff that I haven't even touched, and by the end of the day, um, I'm completely caught up and have very little to do the next morning. And when I look throughout the day, I'm like, it must have been God's blessing for me to get it done, because there was no way that I should have gotten all the work done that I got done. I mean, literally, it should have been physically impossible to get the stuff done within the time frame that I had to work with. But I did it. But the only reason why I did it is because God favored me, and He either allowed me to work faster than I ever did, or He may have allowed time to slow down, kind of like how He did with Joshua when they were fighting the five kings. I think it was five kings, where Joshua prayed to the Lord and commanded him to slow time down to a standstill so that he could complete the task that the Lord had given, which was defeating these five armies. And of course, God practically made the day last many, many, many hours longer before it turned to night. He allowed today to stay in place for as long as it took Joshua to defeat the armies that he was commanded to defeat. Um, so it is just it's just crazy to think about that. You know, God can do a whole lot with very little. And if we want to transfer this to the New Testament, the best scenario you got there is Jesus feeding the 5,000 off of a few fish and a couple of loaves of bread. Um, that's all he had to start with, but yet he fed 5,000, and the 5,000 was men. So that wasn't including the women and the children that was with them. God can do amazing things with so little. Trick is when we see these amazing things happen, excuse me, sorry, or allow these things to happen, um, sorry, I'm just got a dry throat. We need to make sure that we give him the glory and thank him for the accomplishment that he has allowed us to have or be a part of. So, with that, I love you guys. You have a blessed day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.